Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome. We are so excited to have you here today for the Human Design New Year workshop. I am Jess Tilley.
And I'm Kathy Vashanko, which those of you who know me know I'm often known as Chatty Kathy. So I'm going to try not to overtalk too much today.
I love it. I love it. It's such a good response and like initiate, well, not even initiating, but guiding, right? There's such a good guiding there. Kathy and I recently did a podcast interview together, which was so much fun.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
she was on Real Human Design Stories. And so be sure to check out episode 67. So,
Yes, amazing. Loved it. So today we are going to go over gate 38. So before we start jumping into the energy of the time, if you have questions about the actual the movement of the energy, about the mandala, we did another video that gives you more information that we will link in here as well. If you wanted to go into the actual closing energies, why a new year, right? Why has that changed? Why are we doing it at a different time, why the 22nd versus the 1st. So that's all covered in a different episode. So the thing I'd like to start with today, though, is what is so important about closing out the cycle, right? And if you think about an infinity loop, you think about like an eight, right? And you think about the loop and you're like a car, it's a racetrack, right? And you're going around and you're going around and you're going to continue to do the same things over and over and over. This is where we stop to pause and we look at, did this work? Didn't it work? Did I find that purpose? Did I find the thing in my life that gave me that inspiration, starting to look back, just really starting to review and reflect back instead of just going through the motions, constantly just driving. Another way I like to talk about this is the canvas of your life, right? We are all the painters of our life. But a lot of times we get into the very mundane, again, just moving through the motions, moving. And so you have your paintbrush and you're just going back and forth with the default colors that you already had on your paintbrush. This right now is an opportunity to take that paintbrush and wash off what's on that paintbrush and start to choose and look at like, what are the things that light me up? What are the things that bring joy in my life? And starting to come to this awareness. And something really, 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 really important I want to come back to that was talked about for the Human Design Conference for in Ibiza was that your mind can be a prison. So while we get awareness of all of this stuff, it's not just to go through the mind, right? We work with our mind to find the awareness to see how our mind's responding to this, but it's also in the body, in our authority, how we're responding to it. We don't want to, Leela said the most beautiful thing talking about the mind, Leela and Darmen, how it's like a prison cell. And sometimes we feel good because we've shuffled the furniture, we've rearranged the prison cell, we've decorated a little bit, right? But we're still stuck in the mind. So human design is not about being stuck in the mind and living your life just through the mind, right? It's about the lived experience that you are here uniquely to experience.
that's really great energy to start with, and really thinking about, although we just said, not getting trapped in the mind. We do have a mind for a reason, right? It's important to reflect, I believe, contemplate how, especially at this time of the year, the energy really asks us, what are you fighting for? Is it something that really matters? Are you fighting for just to fight? Are you struggling just to struggle? This energy that we're talking about, Great Gate 38, is paired with the energy of Gate 39, which is where the Earth highlights. They're in opposition. So as we're thinking about what to fight for, we're grounded in, is it something that's provoking us to this sense of abundance and faith and that gate 55 energy that the 39 points to. So 39 is about provocation, and the 38 is about fighting the fight that you want to put your energy into, right? So is that where are we putting our energy somewhere that is moving us in the right direction? So, you okay, Jess? Oh, okay. So, Okay, so it's, and it's root center energy. So root center energy operates on a pulse, right? So there's this pulse and it'll feel this strong drive to just, oh, it is, I call it, because I have my design nodes are the 39 and 38. And I've always called it the 1-2 punch because that's what it feels like. It's this energy that goes together in this, right? What's provoking? Who am I going to provoke? Who am I going to fight? And I spent a lot of time in this energy, in this environment. And I'm actually honestly feeling a little bit in that environment right now because the world is feeling this energy. So, right now, as far as wrapping up the year, thinking about that energy, being able to say, am I putting that energy of mine that in a place that feels in alignment with me? Am I operating from my strategy and authority and fighting the fights I'm invited to fight, right? Not initiating fights for me, right? Or are you fighting in response to what your sacral says? Hell yes, this is important, right? And so really looking at how that energy is playing out can be can be difficult. It's not always fun, right? This is not necessarily fun energy. So I'm wondering if it's coming up for you right now, Jess, the way it's coming up for me. You're
Yeah.
muted.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. I was repinning and moving. Absolutely. So, I mean, I think collectively we were feeling that fighter energy. And it's just so funny because I've always felt that at the new year, but then my mind's always been like, it's the beginning, it's the starting, it's fresh, but you're in that tension energy, right? Of feeling, what are you fighting for, right? What is that thing, that energy that you're like, I'm gonna go do this thing, I'm gonna go make this change. So I just wanted to share this with everybody real quick so you can just see. So you can actually see on the body graph here where the 38 is. So, like Kathy was talking about before, she's talking about the root, right? And that is a pressure center. In human design, we have the head and the root that are the pressure centers. Um, and so this right here is the root with the 38. And it's that fighter, that opposition. It's not really that closing energy. And I especially noticed it. It's funny with my kids. I noticed the fight in them today. And then I believe it's the line 3 we're in as well right now with it.
That's funny too, because a lot of people will be like, oh, it's because they've been off school so long and there's blah, blah, blah. But this energy is really strong. And so if we don't harness this energy in a way that's productive, it can be really destructive, right? So, finding a way to, even with your kids, say, let's look at, what feels like what you guys are fighting a lot. Let's talk about fighting. What's worth fighting for, what's not worth fighting for, and maybe having a conversation about what would you like to see be different? Because it's even though this isn't the new year, this is the time to start reflecting on the past year
Mhm.
and to really think about what we want to do going forward into the new year. And everybody thinks they have to have it all figured out by now. But oftentimes the resolutions that we set for January 1st are not the right resolutions and we let them go. And honestly, I've found it to be a much better process to begin setting that. Now, I did already choose my word this year. And I don't know, do you guys choose a word? Do you choose a word, Jess?
I do. I do. I'd love to know. Would you love to share your word?
Sure. In fact, I wrote a blog post about the process of doing it because last year, I'm going to back up because last year my word was trust.
Mhm.
And that morphed into radical self-trust, which basically changed my life completely and has become a big part of my brand. You'll see I use that hashtag everywhere. But this year, my word is simplify.
Mm,
And when I do every transit right now, I do a blog post. And in my group, the Intuitive Human Design group, I put a post about the transits, but then I do a more personalized blog on my website. And when I wrote about this transit, I had just wrote the one about my choosing the word simplify. And I really realized how much this energy was calling to me. to simplify my
Mhm.
struggles, my battles? Where am I putting my energy? What am I putting it into? Where am I allowing the pressure of that, root center energy to maybe take me off track instead of keeping me on track? So how can I simplify things in a way that's going to keep me focused? So right now, one of the big things, and people often do this in January anyway, we feel this need to do it. I think I'm really getting organized in a way that's not about anything other than how can I make life simpler, right? So what's your word?
Absolutely. I was just gonna say, I feel like this time of year, I'm like all the clutter, all the stuff, like we're starting a
Right.
new, like it's almost like that pruning, right? Which
Hmm.
is very perfect for this time. It's like pruning away the parts of you that like you that don't serve you. Going through the winter, the little bit of the dormant time before we come out in the spring, which is so beautiful, coming back to those natural cycles.
Hmm.
So my word for the year is actually awareness.
Ooh.
Yeah, last year was freedom, and I feel like freedom was just, it was there, it was perfect, it was everything I needed, and definitely stepped into freedom. Awareness more from the place of experiencing things and going through it and still feeling, but not necessarily jumping fully into it. So a beautiful analogy someone told me was that, if people are drowning, you can't jump into the pool with them because then they're going to drown you as well. You have to sit on the side and you can help pull out the people that are ready. And I feel like my energy is very like, I'm going to jump in and come in, like, I'm going to come swim with you and go through it with you. But starting to go through things as experiencing it rather than becoming it. So my word is awareness. And for me, that's perfect for this time for 838, finding that personal meaning. It's that pressure from the root center that we're feeling to find that meaning, especially right now, today in the third line, which is about experimenting too. Experimenting, breaking bonds, making bonds. What are those things that bring that meaning to you? And purpose. So the fighter has that energy, opposition. We think it's bad, but it's also to go through life challenges, right? To have a bit of fight is a good thing. It's a good thing to have that in you. But again, coming back to that piece of like, what is worth fighting for? And are we feeling this energy and we're feeling this fight? And I'm fighting you just to start a fight. I'm fighting you and I'm going, I want this wall to be pink. And you're like, does it matter? Like a fight just to fight, right?
Mhm.
Versus it could actually matter to someone. And that's why it's very, very personal. And that's the beautiful thing about starting with this 38, because it is that personal, it's that individual. So maybe for me, fighting for it to be pink, it's like, why? But for someone else, that pink wall is their purpose. That's something that fuels them, right? And so that would be something for them that's worthwhile to fight for. So it's a very individual journey, finding and reflecting for me rather than what the collective is saying, like rather than what your family or your friends who, or even, what you think you should be fighting for. What are the things that connect you in with that purpose, like within yourself, right? That drive to stand up for what that thing is specific to you. Um, and also that piece of like perseverance, right? That it is hard. It is hard sometimes if you're taking on a fight, if you're moving through something new, even when it's an internal fight, right? Fighting your habits, the way you have been doing things just to make a change. So that perseverance, so that energy's there right now with us. Um, but the challenge with this is the biggest piece for me is what was worth fighting for and what was not. So this is where you can start to clean off that paintbrush and go, yeah, I was fighting for that pink wall. I don't care about that pink wall. But you know what I do care about? And then you start putting that energy towards the thing you do care about and start
Yeah,
to live that life more in alignment, right?
yeah. I'm just gonna say, someone said in the comments, someone was trying to get in. I don't know if you can see anybody on there, but I wanted to add to that if I may, because that perseverance is really important. And I love what you said about something not being important to one person and being important to other. But I also want to say that sometimes the catalyst for the fight is not the real fight. Okay. Like, you get in an argument where you snap at something that's insignificant. And the person is like, what? Why are you reacting this way? And you have to be able to stop and say, it's not about this, right? And we can get so caught up on the thing that made the person decide that this was what it is. Like, people think you overreact to something. Well, people don't generally overreact to something. They generally underreact for a really long time
Mhm.
and then overreact to something because there's so much pressure built up, right? That built up pressure that they have not, use that energy to fight for whatever. And fight is such a harsh word, but sometimes it's just about standing up for whatever is important to you. And for me, this is really a time when I'm like, okay, let's look at the energy of where I haven't stood up for myself and what I want and what's important, right? Because it's this individual energy. So where have I been saying no to myself, where my heart and my body is just saying yes, right? And then when you get in a position where somebody wants you to say no to some little thing, for me, with my emotional wave, I've got that 3955. So it's a whole different ballgame for me. I've got this really strong, and it's a split, right? So you connect that split on the right day with the right energy, and I'm gonna come at it, right? I'm just gonna, and it's hard, it's as much as I'm aware of it, when it happens, it's still like almost out of my control. And I want to say it is because I do believe with more awareness, there is more control. But there are times where I'm just like, no, right? I'm going to stand up for what I believe in. And, um, and then sometimes we're conditioned to think that that's bad, right? So I've always had a rule in my relationships of that I speak the truth. I just don't ever, I don't, and I might say it in an angry moment sometimes, but I don't ever say something that I don't really, um, I want to be careful how I say it. I don't ever say something just because I'm angry. So I'm not going to say something I don't truly believe, right? So, and I think that that's where we can look at, the integrity of the fight, all these things, but this perseverance is important because it gives us the momentum to move forward in the right directions. Sometimes it has to be with this, it's individual energy, so it's mutative energy, right? So it changes things. And we're going into a very mutative time. We're leading up to 2027. And this, if you follow numerology at all, this is a 9 year we're going into. And nine is all about endings and letting things go and healing. And that can be scary. So yeah, there's a lot to reflect on and ponder and my big thing that comes back to my last year's radical self-trust is everything is happening for my greatest expansion, even when it sucks in the moment,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. Oh, and equally so, it's so funny, as a generator, saying no to the things, putting that fight in for the things that you don't want to do, the things that aren't aligned, right? Fighting could look like that yes, or it could look like that no. And also talking about the emotions, coming back to the place that emotions are just energy moving, right? It's that energy moving and coming back to that piece of awareness of why, like what's happening right here? What did build up here? Is it just moving? And sometimes it's just simply the energy moving. Sometimes it's something that sparked it. Sometimes it's something within you, right? And that's that part where it's about the human design experiment. There is no textbook right or wrong way to do this. You experiment and you see, and that's why that awareness is so important, to start to reflect, to start to notice within yourself, how does this play out for me? And so that's a perfect transition into the actual questions. So the questions in the workbook are questions that for me felt good with this energy. But I'm going to openly invite you all, and even if you'd like to share questions that come up for you that seem like pertinent during this time, please share those. These are just kind of not even guides, but just suggestions of maybe like, how does this question feel for you? What does this bring up? These aren't necessarily like, these are the questions to go through, but I would definitely recommend starting to go through them and seeing what comes through. And again, share, like if you were like, oh my goodness, this big question during this time. So next year, when we create the workbook, again, we can add those questions, we can change, we can all work together and grow together, right? So the first question for gate 38. And so gate 38 was actually activated on the 30th. But for the lens we're looking at, we started on January 1st. We're going from the 1st to the 22nd. And so the first question we have in the workbook is, what values and causes ignite my passion, right? Like, what are the things in my life that ignite my passion? And if you're like, I don't know what my passion is, that's a beautiful awareness. There is no right or wrong answer, right? There is nothing right or wrong with this. This is just diving into the awareness of it, right? And then taking it that next step and going, how do they align with my true purpose and that long-term vision? And if you don't have a long-term vision, again, there's no right or wrong. It's like, okay, interesting. And the verbiage I love to use is, that's interesting, not, oh, I don't have my vision. It's like, oh, that's interesting. I don't have a long-term vision. I wonder why is that? What's there? That's interesting. And I would love for you all to adopt some form of loving that's interesting in your life instead of beating yourself up. This is not a tool to beat yourself up for. This is not something to go, oh, I messed up last year, or oh, I've messed up all this stuff. Not at all. This is to come back to who you are and love yourself so deeply and dearly for where you are and gaining that extra awareness of it.
That's really beautiful because it's exactly what I found was the impetus to me getting out of my head and really into my body and into my experiment was to when I would feel something or notice something, just going, isn't that interesting? And that's exactly what I did. Although I would say it more in an affirmative, isn't that interesting? Um, and that's that's really a beautiful way that was very empowering for me in not beating myself up over, especially a lot of this energy that can feel very icky when you're in it, right? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say when I wrote my blog about this, I was because this energy actually shifted on December 30th.
Mhm.
So that was Sunday.
Mhm.
And Sunday was a day that I had two really powerful events. The first thing in the morning was I did a end of year wrap up, followed by on the 31st, a 2025 planning kind of business strategy with human design business coach, Vicki Dixon, who I love dearly. And she asked three really powerful questions in that I think would be great to add to this. And I don't know if is this a good time to mention them, or do you want to go through these more?
Absolutely. It felt like a
Okay.
really good time to pause. And so that's
Okay.
probably exactly why it's perfect.
So, and it's funny because she doesn't really do a lot with the transits herself. So she wasn't thinking about the energy of the transits. And at the time, we weren't really into them yet. But so I was writing the thing right after that, and I was fully into it. And I kept thinking about the three questions she asked us. And she said, what did I stand for in 2024? And then this one was really good. Where have I left pieces of myself behind throughout the year?
Mm.
Right?
Mhm.
And then what have I left unsaid over the year?
Mhm.
And those really um, got me going, right? So then
Mhm.
everything's a yeah, process. And then I went to this event that was an end of year in-person event at like a local metaphysical wellness center. It was the idea was what releasing the year, right? So we wrote down what we wanted to leave behind in 2024. And we had these little burning bowls and we burnt it and we did a bunch of different stuff. And so the combination of those things happening before I then came home and wrote those blog posts because I think it was pretty late, if I'm remembering right, that the transit changed on Sunday. It was like late in the evening. Or maybe it was early in the morning. It was early in the morning on the 31st. That's right. I wrote it on the 30th. And it just has really had me in this place of what what is all this about? What's it all about, Alfie? What's that from? There's like a little song or a movie clip or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and some people say that's mind, right? That's the mind, and that if we're really embracing this passenger consciousness, that we're leaving that behind. But I think that there's a marriage there, right? Of not letting the mind drive,
Mhm.
but still using it to make sure we're seeing, there's this, a lens that, we can have passenger consciousness, but if we're looking out dirty windows, right?
Yeah,
We're
that's
not
actually
gonna,
a really great analogy. Yeah.
we're not gonna have the same ride if we have these beautiful sparkling windows and are looking, have you ever been driving down the road and you're looking one way for a long time, like you're the passenger and you're sitting there looking out this side, and all of a sudden you turn and you go, and you realize you've been missing everything,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes you got to turn your head and see what you're missing,
Avoiding the potholes. Yes.
right? Yeah. Well,
Yes.
that's more up to the driver, but I get what you're saying, right?
Yeah. It reminds me of Mario Kart when you get the squid, right? And you're like, oh, I can't see, right? Where to, yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
It's too funny. Yeah, exactly. Our mind is here, and that's also a beautiful reminder for all of us, right? Sometimes we can feel like, oh, the mind, get the stick. We're not beating the mind, right? The mind is a beautiful, beautiful part of us, right? And it plays a role, right? It's here to do the thinking. The difference is it's not here to make the decisions, right? That authority is within, depending, different authorities, that's within you, right? But the mind is a beautiful part of this experience and working with that awareness. So thank you. That was so perfect for adding those questions. Those are so potent. I'll add those to the group and for next year as well. And that's just, the perfection of it, right? Sometimes we feel like, oh, I have to have it all figured out. But then that's so stagnant, right? It gets to grow and evolve and like move with us. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I love
That,
that. So
that
thank you.
part about where we left parts of us behind really spoke to me. And I really felt like, oh, I got to go back and get her. Because as a sixth line off the roof, one of the big parts about being off the roof was me realizing, oh, when I got on the roof, there were parts of me I left behind. And I've been trying to consciously cultivate those parts of me. And so I realized there were times where in the past year, I did a disservice to those parts of me still, or other parts of me that in the process of one thing I'm leaving behind.
Mhm.
So really that was a really powerful reflection for me.
Just for anybody who isn't overly familiar with human design, the sixth line goes through three different phases. So the first phase it goes through as a line three, which is like experimenting, right? It's like playing, exploring, experimenting. The next phase is on the roof phase, where you kind of sort through everything, take a step back on the roof, where you kind of culminate all that knowledge. And then you come off the roof, and that's where you step into the role model phase. So that's what Kathy was talking about. So she's now in her role model phase, which is very exciting. Hey.
Follow me to see what not to do.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
I
But that is
love
true. The
it.
role model doesn't mean you're perfect. It just means people watch what you do and they learn from it, whether it's what to do and what not to do, right?
Yes, which I
Yeah.
love. That's amazing. So the next question we have in the contemplative questions is, did I find purpose in this last cycle? And I love how that works with what did I stand for, right? Really connecting in with like, did I move through this last year? And again, no stick. Put the stick down. Put the stick down. We're not beating ourselves up. It's not, oh, I didn't find purpose. Ah, it's did I find it? Did I find that feeling within myself? And it feels different for all of us, right? And then the next question, I think I keep coming back to this because it's so, so potent for me, is which battles are truly worth my time and energy, right? Not fighting the battles just to fight the battle, right? And then how do you distinguish what are the meaningful challenges from the unnecessary ones? And always trusting in how does this feel for me, right? How does this feel for me? The pink wall example again. For someone else, they might be like, that's not worth fighting for, but for you, it might be the thing, right? So allowing yourself, giving yourself that permission to go, this is a thing for me. This is important in my life, and that's perfect, even if it's not for someone else. And then the next question, am I standing up for causes that feel authentic to me? Again, to me. Or am I fighting just to meet external
Mhm.
expectations? Right? It's that piece. Is it something from within me, or is this a pressure that I'm feeling from the outside? And then how do I align my efforts with opportunities that reflect this? How do I start getting in line with these? And then the last one is, where have I invested energy in conflicts that didn't align with my purpose? And how can I avoid these distractions moving forward? So a reminder again with these are just starting points. You might go and take these and journal, and then another question comes up, and then something else comes up. And that's the beauty of it. There's no right or wrong way to do it, right? It's your way. You might just look at these questions and then talk them out to yourself. You might talk them with a friend. However you go through this process is beautiful. And maybe even sharing with other people how you do it to help give them that permission that there's not a way to do it, right? It's what is your way.
Yeah, I love that. And as you were talking about some of these things, I was sitting here going, "Oh yeah, my open head ajna. I have a completely open ajna and undefined head." So I would often, especially in the past, get hung up in fighting a fight just to fight it, to show how certain I was about something, and without getting too deep into the taboo subject of politics, that's a place where people often will fight a fight just because it's aligned with their side, right? You pick a side, what in anything, whether it's politics or just any particular issue in life, right? And then you know what your side believes, and then you argue for those points. And you fight for those points, whether you truly understand them, believe them, and there is this feeling of not being able to allow yourself to even see the opposite side because then you're being disloyal, right? But this energy is not tribal energy. It's not collective energy. This energy is individual. It's about what's right for you, right? What do you believe in? So the fights that we're meant to have in this energy are not tribal. They're what's important to us, not our bucket of people, not our camp that we're in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I'm trying to remember exactly. I just did a course with Barbara Ditlow. It was amazing on the 2027, the shifts. And
Oh,
it was so good. I highly recommend it to anybody who wants to dive deeper into exactly what's happening, where the keys are shifting, and just she's also hope motivation. So the way she explains it is just
mm.
it's beautiful. I loved it. And she said, I can't remember exactly what she said. It was like contrast or something like that, where that's where we grow. That's where the beauty is because we sit in pockets and we tend to like surround ourselves with people who think the same way as us, as people who experience life the same way as us. They're more like us. But when we come into, it might have been conflict. Um, when we come into conflict, this is such a beautiful opportunity for growth where you can hear the other side, when you can start to learn and expand your horizons, like what you know and what you're experiencing. It's not just the singularity of like sitting in this pocket, seeing everything, right? Opening your mind to it.
Yeah, that's really good. In fact, I there was a group that because I at one point really considered myself an activist, but I really felt when I started to get deep into my experiment, I felt this pull to remove myself from the Facebook group of these people because there was so much tribalism of you're either with us or you're against us. And it was like things like I went to this restaurant and I overheard somebody say that the manager was one of these people, so we need to all not go there anymore. Just like, and it was like, I get it, but like, so we're going to just completely like, and how do then it's just going to completely keep having, we're going to have two different groups, and then those are we're just going to separate more and more and more. And that's one of the things I really loved when you and I were in Santa Fe together, the beauty of that community where there were people who were so clearly of different minds about different things, even of human design, right? There were human design fundamentalists there, as I like to call them, or purists, right? And there were people who were um, very more loosey goosey. I don't mean any disrespect, but like who, or like I'm certified in quantum human design and I'm self-trained in traditional human design and I love to get into the gene keys. And I never felt that we couldn't all in that community just be and disagree agreeably, right?
Yep. Same thing
Yeah.
in Ibiza. When in Ibiza as well, it was just everybody allowed everybody to be themselves. And there was no tension in that, right? It was not okay. I shouldn't say there was no tension in it. I'm sure there were occasions of tension, but as a whole, it was just such a beautiful experience to see what it could be like, right? When we allow ourselves, and human design is the science of differentiation. We are different. We are
Mm.
different. We're here to be different. And I was smiling while you were saying that, not because I thought it was great. It's terrible when people are like them, but it made me smile because it brought up this thing that I love so deeply in my heart because I have to have visuals. And for me, the visual is we're all white light. Every single one of us. And we go through the prism, right? The prism of life. We come through the prism. And what happens when the white light comes through here? We get every color, we get every variation. And you know what? We are meant to be different. We are meant to be purple. And I'm purple and I'm so different from blue. And yes, you're different and I'm different from green and I'm different from yellow. Yes, we're different, but you know what? We're all the same. We are all
Right.
the same. We all come from the same place and we're having that different experience that is different and it's meant to be different. And finding the love for that difference, even if it's not right for me, even that's not my thing, I can still love you doing your thing. And that just, oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't need to make you dim your light to shine mine. And it makes me think of there's an analogy I like to use. Have I ever told you my peach ice cream story?
No.
So I live in Georgia now. I'm from Chicago, and when I got here, I'd never had peach ice cream. And I got some peach ice cream, and it was amazing. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And somebody that I was eating it with, and I don't even remember who, was like, oh, Amy Lee lives here. We'll have to connect. Okay, but there was somebody I was eating it with that said, oh, it's just too peachy. And I thought about this and I thought, imagine your peach ice cream and there's someone who says it's too peachy. And so you stop being so peachy and you're more like vanilla.
Mhm,
Well, vanilla ice cream already exists.
mhm,
And I say, be the most peachy peach ice cream, right? And so, there are always going to be people who don't like peach ice cream.
mhm,
They're not your people.
mhm. Uh,
Be
yeah,
peachy.
that's funny because I'm writing a children's book about that. Um,
Oh,
yeah, about through the lens of pickles.
oh, wow.
My daughter came home when she was about probably 6. I think she's 8 now. And she was like, so and so didn't like me. And I said, that's okay. Not everyone's going to like you. And I was like, how do I explain this? How do I explain this? And I was like, do you like pickles? She hates pickles. Like she really doesn't like pickles. And I was like, do you like pickles? And she's like, oh no. And I'm like, yeah, but what about your sister? She has a younger sister, Savannah. It's like, does she like pickles? And Savannah's like, yeah, pickles are the best. I want pickles now. And I was like, okay, but is it the same pickle? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, so what's different here? And they're like, well, I don't like it. I'm like, okay, that's your taste. It's
Hmm.
your taste. There's nothing that changes in this pickle. This pickle's perfect. And it's being the most pickly pickle out there, which is what it's here to be.
Right,
Savannah loves it. You hate it. And that's okay. But also
right,
giving her that permission to go, sometimes you don't like people, sometimes you don't like things, and that's okay, but we can still be kind
right. Yeah,
and seeing the perfection of it. So, yeah,
yeah.
I think that's, yeah, going from fighter to pickles, right?
Right. Fight for your right to be a
Fight, fight
pickle.
for your right to be a pickle. There we go. That's it.
Now we're talking about pickles and ice cream. That's
Pickles
kind of a
and ice
funny
cream.
combination,
Is
right?
there anything better?
Right? Yeah.
Some of you might say no, some of you might say yes, and that's perfect, right?
Right?
It's
Yeah.
perfect.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Kathy, thank you so much. So excited to have you all here. Let's see, on the 6th, we are going to be talking about the activation of Gate 54. So we'll be doing another live. We'll also be posting all the recordings and look forward to chatting with you all then.
I can't wait. This has been great. Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye.
Peace out.